Our guest for the afternoon is painter Rekha Rodwittiya, here on the invitation of the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Academy to present a slideshow of her works. Rekha calls herself a feminist, and her works depict the female form in beautiful and unusual ways. And we will speak to Rekha about her journey in the world of art. Welcome to the Academy.
My absolute pleasure to be here, and what a chance meeting under a tree in Kochi provided was this wonderful possibility of the beginning of a professional friendship with Diwan Manna. So it's always these wonderful collisions that bring about possibilities like this. So now we sit together to talk.
And we get a chance to see your work as well as your philosophy. So tell us, Rekha, you grew up as a daughter of an Air Force officer and of course had varied influences, which you also talk about. I'm sure it must have affected your art in many ways. So tell us about little about yourself first, and where did the journey begin, and how did it all start, and where is it now?
I think I always wish to acknowledge that there's something about having the privilege of education. I always like to sort of underline that. I think that as an Asian woman, coming from what was the original middle class before we had this wonderful boom in economy, I was fortunate to sort of be born into a family that my parents came from different cultural backgrounds, bringing with them a wonderful sense of the optimism of a new India.
Okay.
And I think that sort of became my placenta, that became the womb in which I grew up. The womb of the comprehension of recognizing that opportunities of education become your trampoline that allows you to find who you are. I think that perhaps because my parents were part of that Nehruvian India, for example, English is my mother tongue and I'm unapologetic about it. I had influences that were completely without the burden and the bias of the rigidity of what sometimes we impose through community affiliations. Things like religion and the space of ethnic belonging was never something that labeled us.
Okay.
And perhaps because my father was a fighter pilot, very heroic in his sense of commitment to his nation, and my mother came from an extraordinarily erudite and elite family where the women were extraordinarily empowered. Empowered in ways that for the right reasons, about desiring to contribute and understand their placement within a society. I think that these were the kind of gifts of legacy that became my childhood playground. You're right in saying that many things influence you. I think that one of the wonders of being born into my family was the fact that my father wasn't rooted in any place. So you had minimum belongings, and your sense of belonging was to be able to assimilate and adjust into wherever you went, and to understand that difference was something that actually you were never to fear.
Okay.
You were always to adapt to, and you were to also understand that it enhanced your space of learning, and that the parameters of learning were really guided by your curiosities. So I think that these are really the legacies of what I have grown up in. I think that one of the greatest gifts that my parents perhaps gave to me was to recognize that one's vulnerability was the stepping stone to acknowledging where you find your strength.
Okay.
And so words like boldness, or words where that talk about discovering yourself, were always things that were put forward to us as being necessary as part of our vocabulary of defining personality. That failure was not something that brought you down, but what allowed you to know yourself better. So I think that I'm truly privileged. I'm also a very, very desired girl child. I love the story of my conception because it's, as all stories in families are embroidered with the delight of love. Mine, I think, was gifted to me with great love. My mother wanted to have a second child, and my father, being a fighter pilot, was perhaps apprehensive of his own mortality given the nature of his job. And my mother sort of managed to emotionally seduce him into agreeing finally. And the condition was, and I was born in 1958, since I'm 56 now, and will be 57 this year, that yes, we will go ahead and have a baby on the condition that it will be a girl. And so I really was born a princess, born absolutely to believe that the world was mine to inhabit. And I think that I was having this interesting conversation with somebody yesterday who asked me whether what I sort of meant by empowerment, and what I whether it was something that was a condescension, a condescending imposition that we give to others when we decide that others need something that we have. And it's actually not that. I think that when you are gifted the comprehension of what liberty and freedom really means, then you don't have the privilege not to share it.
Okay.
So that is, I think, my definition of what female empowerment is about.
Right. And so was art a natural way of life at your home, considering that your parents were?
I come from a family of music. Well, my grand aunt and Yehudi Menuhin studied together.
Okay.
They've done kapand performances together. My mother was, trained as a pianist as well. I think it was part of that generation maybe. But Western classical music and literature. My maternal aunt wrote, my grandmother wrote. I think it was part of a kind of ethos and era of discoveries for that generation, and perhaps I think I imbibed those areas of aesthetics. I think my parents, perhaps because of the sophistication of their upbringing, had a natural inclination towards a more refined space of aesthetics. But no, there wasn't that sort of a predilection within the family. I grew up on Air Force bases. I was a child who suffered ill health, and I never went to school till I was 7, so I was homeschooled. And I think that when you live with I'm a very happy child, but you live with your own imaginative territory, I think you cultivate that as being something with credibility and very believable. So just as I would talk to all the flowers in the garden, I also had many books in which I would draw, and I knew at the age of 5, I knew that my greatest sense of articulation and personal solace was with the drawn image.
Okay.
And so from the age of 5, I was always going to be a painter.
Really?
And as all children have their little wish list, I think I grew up with my family believing it was just one of my little wish lists,
Yes.
But as I said, being very revered, I was not pampered. I was revered. I think there's a marked difference in that. All that I did, my father, for example, would come back from postings where we were not allowed to be with him, and I would be in my 8th standard or 7th standard, and he would commission me. He would say, "Darling, when I come back, I would like you to have 30 cards ready for me." And in those days, he would buy them at ₹1 a card.
Oh, wow.
So I was very professional. I would earn my money making my art, and my father would faithfully use those cards. My form of communication from a very early age was the drawn image. So he had stacks of drawings, stick figures and funny things. And so when he passed away, there was this little tin box full of all these, memories of, I suppose, his beloved child. Yeah, so I always was going to be an artist, and I think that, again, maybe the gift of confidence that my parents gave to me was that I believed it, and so I am an artist.
Yes. And you studied at Baroda first, and then...
I studied in Baroda. I was part of what was in those days a 5-year BA program. I then did a 1-year part of the MA program there, and I was awarded an Inlaks Scholarship. I then subsequently went on a scholarship to London, studied for 2 years there. So all of 8 years of education. I don't know how educated I am, but that's been it's been an amazing journey of understanding my ancestries. I think that the day I walked into the art college, I could truly believe I had come home.
Okay.
And I always say this, I always acknowledge it, that I think that I have learnt everything in 2 places, from the space of my family and from the space of belonging to, completely devoted and committed to the world of art. And these are the 2 bookends of my whatever I am, whatever ignorance perhaps I possess, or whatever influences that shape and chart who I am. These are the spaces of what has infused my body with, and my creative thought process, my articulation, my sensibility, my politics has come from these 2 spaces.
Okay. And was it at that time for a woman to enter an art college? How was the...
No, I think I belong not so far back in a generation. I think that people of, way earlier than me, Ira Roy Chowdhury and people like that were people who charted, Geeta Kapoor. I mean, they're amazing women who have been part of the art world. And I think that, if you look at global histories, you'll find that look at our artisans, look at our craftspeople.
Right.
The world of my ancestry is not only in the urban context. I owe much to those who may not be historically documented, but I come from a very strong tradition of female heritage that dates back centuries. And I think it would be disrespectful not to acknowledge that.
That's right. So Baroda and then London, what were the differences, and how did you grow as an artist? Because you said education was something that...
I think I've been very fortunate to have, I've grown up in a very rigorous academic environment, and subsequently I'm a very tough teacher. I think that I've benefited from the disciplines. I had somebody like Nasreen Mohammadi as my teacher, and Jyoti Bhatt in India, Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh and K.G. Subramaniam. I really have had some of the best. Wow. Very tough, very demanding. I went back to college 4 days after my delivery with 14 stitches, and that's the way I am. I mean, I have been committed because there was an expectancy from me, and I think that if somebody holds an expectancy of you, that is the greatest compliment you can receive.
True.
So you stand taller, and you push your parameters more. I don't think that one can actually quantify exactly what it is that one learns, but if I have to kind of create some sense of a map for you that allows you to know, I think that my learning of art history, the rigors of learning art history, really allowed me to contextualize art accurately and correctly, and to de-romanticize this entire profession, and to see it for what it is, for what it actually offers. And it has so many layers to it that it would be foolhardy to believe that you can just place it under any singular label. So it's like a great dish that has multiple ingredients, and you put it in your mouth and you savor it, and you really can't distinguish one ingredient from the other. And I think that's what art history is. It does for you this, it allows you to belong in every sector of its being if you take yourself into it. So I'm very grateful to the Baroda School of Art for its, especially in those years, for its immaculate and emphatic insistence on training you to know your art history really, really well, and for the rigors of a studio practice. I remember having Karl Kandalawala floating around the college, and B.N. Goswami, bumping into him, and Jyotindra Jain, and Geev Patel, and Mildred Archer, and Geeta Kapoor. He was sort of tripping over these people all the time, along with the Pat painter and the Molela artist and the Madhubani painter. It was fecund. It was fecund. It was so. It was something that the college was open from morning till the next morning, and you felt very responsible in elbowing your space into that kind of thing, and sort of quietly believing that you became vital to its existence. Of course you weren't, but it allowed you to feel, to create your sense of belonging, and that's what made you take yourself seriously. So I think what I learnt in India, I could never have learnt elsewhere, and I think that's why, as a person who's been later part of scholarship committees and educational policy making, I'm very emphatic that I would really like to see my Indian students per se, whether they are people I engage with or people I'm meeting for the first time, who would understand the value of doing their undergraduate programs in India before going. I am deeply grateful to, again, the period of time I studied in London, because I was fortunate, perhaps. I got admissions in a number of art colleges, and so I could choose the one I wanted to. I was also very lucky to get this really amazingly well-funded scholarship. I was their first art scholar, and subsequently the scholarship has been available for many other people to have that opportunity. And I chose very distinctively to go and study under the tutorage of Peter de Francia, because he was somebody who understood, had a wonderful knowledge of India, contemporary India, because many people know about ancient Indian history, but are absolutely illiterate in their comprehension of contemporary context. And I was very, very clear, because I was going when I was 24 years old, and I had, I think, when you work very hard, you mature in accordance, and I had personal circumstances that also matured me. I'm grateful for those. And so at 24, I was not looking for guidance that was not generated from an understood premise of what I wanted. And so I didn't choose to go to some place and forget what I knew to be taught something that somebody thought I needed to learn. I needed to go into an MA program that would allow me and benefit me in expanding the horizons of where I already was at a cusp of. And I think that I grew up in a sort of with a socialist conscience. I still choose to hold that. I very much never want to relinquish my radical spaces of political need. And I think that the RCA suited me very well. I was fortunate to engage in that. And
so when you say political radical need, what do you, because many a time this comes up in your
my writings,
as well.
Yeah, I think that there are two spaces of the political. One is the personal politics that you again orchestrate, formulate, make choices, and define, and that is a space that has to guide you, and that has to be your benchmark, and that has to be your conscience, and you have to be answerable to that. The other is a larger space of political engagement, which is not only about the politics of governing a country, but the politics of perception of everything. And so my window of perception is gender politics. I think that's the prism through which I look at the world. That's my DNA.
Okay.
I'm not a feminist artist, I'm a feminist. And so therefore all things that I do would be via the perception of that prism, and therefore other things would also enter into those concerns. And so this space of recognizing your personal and how you define it, and where you locate yourself within a collective, is you spend a lifetime doing. But you don't spend a lifetime ambiguously doing it.
Okay.
It's like, even if you're a nomad and you're carrying just a tent, from time to time you have to pitch your tent, and you have to have something to pitch. If you don't have anything to pitch, you are really without anything that would frame or phrase your existence. So my politics is something that phrases who I am, and I think that it's exemplified in the way I live, in what I do, in the engagements I have. I think that I'm also somebody who is inherently an activist. I'm not affiliated to activist groups or work, but I think that my interventions in life with how I teach and what I do, without over articulating them, comes from that space of instinctively always recognizing that I have energies. I don't want to use the word power or anything like that, but I think I have the ability to be a bridge, to be an intervention, to be something that holds a space for another to be brought into.
Okay.
And I don't take that lightly. I hold that space, and I hold myself very accountable to those areas of my life.
Okay. But is there a certain history that has led you to this roadmap, or was it instinctive?
I think that when you're born privileged, I'm born privileged not necessarily economically. I'm born privileged because I'm a thinking, articulate person, and that is the greatest privilege you can have. And when you have that, you can't presume that it's enough to be, that your existence in this world for yourself is enough. It would be too masturbatory. Nice as that is from time to time, but it's very self-serving. At the end of the day, I think that I'm completely non-religious. I'm an atheist. I have respect for those who need religion, but I have no need for it at all. And therefore, what do? You create other alternative spaces in which faith and hope and optimism exist,
okay.
and where you place your energies, and you also devise your space of humanism. I think that a world without humanism is a soulless world, and so then what is humanism? You know,
exactly.
That my entire space of existence is on that very small handkerchief of belief that all things must contribute in some ways to your comprehension that it holds purpose.
Okay.
If it doesn't hold purpose, then I don't see what we do with it. And so that is my guiding force.
And that is activism for you?
It brings in
yes.
things that would
yes.
hold that. Yes.
And does art have enough space for creating this energy?
I am an artist, and so if I'm eating, I'm an artist. If I'm in the bathroom, I'm an artist. I'm an artist. It's not just making a painting that makes me an artist.
True.
And so anything that I'm doing, if I'm conversing with somebody, my space of identity is that. My imprint in this world, in the shadows that I cast, I am an artist. But it's not just that the act of making art makes me an artist. So there is this sort of subtle difference in the way I perceive being an artist. All things, I breathe, I see as an artist, I think as an artist, I look as an artist, I speak as an artist. So that is just like my name is Rekha. I am artist. I think that I shy away from the romance of being, what the word artist means. I think that it's the frame around me, nothing more, nothing less. But the energies that one contains are much deeper, and it would flow through these conduits of me being woman, of me being artist, of me being mother, of me being daughter, of me being lover, of me being friend, of me being teacher, and they're all connected. It's like looking at a tapestry and then trying to find the most important thread. You pull one thread out, you damage the tapestry.
True.
So that's what artist is for me.
Okay, and tell us a little about your works. How have they evolved over the years, Rekha? Now it's a lot of female form, and the exclusion of the male form, which you said is not deliberate, but has happened, and it's not a beautified female form that we see, but a strong image. Of course, now that we know you a little, it comes from that. So tell us a little about your work, your paintings, your art.
I think that when you see my works today, you will see that there is a kind of engagement and a connectivity with a territory of ideas. And I think, like, and I in fact say in my paper today that I'm very much like a gardener. I have a very small garden, and I keep digging and I keep growing things in it. The garden doesn't change, the patch of land doesn't change. But I think that when you turn the soil, you fertilize it enough to put things in, and you find new things grow. The area of gender politics is quite massive, and yet some of the concerns that I hold are still the small little ones, the seedlings that are still unable to take root. I would answer your question slightly differently. You know, India specifically, and I've said very often, I live in India by political choice. I've had wonderful professional opportunities to be in Britain and New York. And much to the horror of my teachers and gallerists and whatever, have turned it down, and I see no virtue in it. So let me not put any false crown or halo over my head, even unintended. I say this because if you live in a country like India, and if you have even the smallest sense of vision, you will recognize immediately the disparities and the injustices that are sort of intolerable, that come from the spaces of patriarchy, feudalism, and the corruption of power. And it is this that I think which makes, which is the underline on the word.
Yes.
In my statement, that it becomes important, therefore, to identify for myself what it is within this large world of interests that one may have. What is the thing that most holds my outrage, or what most holds the fact that I can't breathe? And it is that then that leads you closer and closer to the space of what you choose to examine, and then what would then invest itself as the territory, as to belong within the territory of your preoccupations. That's what makes my art.
Okay.
So.
And how has it over the years changed? And also, why specifically gender politics? Was it difficult also in the world of art as a woman artist, or no? You did not.
No, I think that you know, I don't know how others perceive it, but there's this funny joke that we have in the family that in the 80s it was so much to do with women's studies. I must say that the world has come to my doorstep. And I say that in humility, an absolute humility. It humbles me. I'm not somebody who is, I don't network by choice. I have always worked with a gallery system. I enjoy keeping a very defined space with myself, my personal space, and a public space. No professional transactions are ever allowed in my home. All things go through my gallery. So I have rather an image in the art world of being very arrogant, which I'm not, but I love it. I hide behind this wonderful camouflage. People are dead scared of me, even better. And I'm a softie at heart, but be that as it may, it's brilliant to have these wonderful camouflages to hide behind. But what I'm trying to say is that I think that you will exist in any world by the definitions you make for yourself.
Okay.
I gave myself 5 years. I believe that if you really want to be of any consequence, you need to have a center space on a stage. Now, what that means to somebody may be different. I have never fought shy of economics. I've been economically independent since I'm 18. I needed to define that for myself. So, with the complete approval of my parents. And when I say economically independent, not pocket money, I've been economically independent since I'm 18, which is an unusual phenomenon for an Asian woman. And I think that was my key to my success.
Completely.
That I'm not afraid of money issues.
Okay.
You know. And so I have a sensibility and I know what I want in life, and I put things very simply for myself. So for me, being center stage was bringing an articulation to my vocabulary as an artist. That's what, you know, if you're a writer, you can have all the most brilliant ideas.
Completely.
But you write and you write and you trash it and you write it and you trash it. I did 200 paintings in 2 years at the RCA. I still work till 4 and 5 in the morning. I sleep only 2, 3, 4 hours is a long sleep for me. As I said, I'm 56. I'm economically quite okay. I don't need to do it, but I do need to. I need to because I wake up acknowledging my ignorance of all that I don't know, and we all don't know so much. And till they find the scientific whiz formula, we're all going to die. And the process of that takes away your energies. At some point, we're all going to be 80 and 90 if we live that long. I had the privilege of looking after my parents. I'm a great believer in joint families and the embrace of having those you love close to you. It's painful sometimes to see your loved ones. I've just lost my mother. And so you are going to be all of that sometime. And so I need to work every day of my life as though it's the last day of my life.
Mm.
And so when I came back from my college education, and I knew that chapter was over, then you know that you are entering into something that is really to do with entering with responsibility the adult world of being an artist. That comes with some responsibility. The moment you put your artwork out in an exhibition, you become a public figure. I have many people who I don't know, but who know me because of my work.
Mm.
This should be something that I take a responsibility for, and I cannot put something out there that doesn't hold the truth of who I am and the credibility of the present as I exist.
Okay.
If I take that lightly, if I begin to just do something only because I have been fortunate for whatever reasons, not necessarily because my art is good, to become somebody who is well known, or that people care enough to invest their money in my art, if I get swayed by those things, if those are the things that frame what success is or what being center stage is, then I have lost the core axis of my own philosophy for myself.
Mm.
The core axis of my philosophy is me alone with nobody, and that I can really look at myself and know that I am not cheating.
Okay.
I'm not cheating on anything, not on time, not on articulation of technique, not of exploration of idea, not on anything. And if I can do that, then that's been one day correctly spent.
Wow.
You know?
Mm.
So I don't know if I've answered your question, but for me, being an artist holds responsibility. I accept that I'm a public person. And in being a public person, I have to abide by the rules I place for myself about that. That is the most important thing for me.
So is the art a blend of your personal ideology, philosophy, as well as the contemporary world that surrounds you? Because the
contemporary, you know, your influences are of the time.
times.
I mean, I am conditioned by the space of the world as is today. For example, I would not visit Myanmar till Aung San Suu Kyi was released. Now, does that help the cause? It may not at all.
True.
I could never apply for anything when I was in Britain, and there were lots of wonderful awards that had money from the apartheid regime. Did that help the cause? I'm sure nobody knows of a Rekha Rodwittiya who was a college kid who didn't do that. But at the end of the day, it is those collective endeavors that create a political space that become the plinth, that become the scaffolding, the invisible one brick that is also part of a larger, huge monument. So yes, I think that I live in the here and the now. I have my ear to the ground always. I have a desire always to look for what is the positive, what is the, you know, where do you place something? You have to have belief, you have to have faith, you have to have, or else I couldn't be an artist. You know, I think that one of the things I learned very early on, and I was sharing this with somebody yesterday in the wonderful little evening we had at Divanji's house. I wanted to come back from London after being at the RCA for 1 year, because there was this terrible massacre in Assam, the Nelli massacre of children. So I went and I told my teacher, Peter DeFrancia, I'm leaving, I'm going back, I will start teaching in a village. And I thought I would get a kind of an approval, a kind of somebody who would empathize and identify with the need of the hour that I was spelling out. And he mocked me and he said, you know, pack your bags, I'll come and help you, sort of thing, and go back. And you know, your self-gratification, your need to know that you are doing something, that really accountability is something that you can tangibly recognize. You can count the number of students you teach every year, you can sort of, you know, have your feel-good factor. He said, if you don't believe that art has the power to hold spaces of conscious, you know, alertness for people, that it has the power to hold itself within a society as meaningful, as being something that is essential within a society, then don't be an artist. Don't do it, because if you don't hold that conviction, and it was the biggest wake-up call for me, because in truth, if you don't hold that belief, then you would simply be somebody who, if then doesn't make art, or in my case make paintings, I'd be making pictures. I'm not making pictures. You know, I'm not telling stories. My art doesn't hold narratives that are like bedtime stories. My art is a space of mediation, of observed and desired, you know, ideas that are from a space of actual existence that you put together in the hope that somebody will be able to be touched and therefore provoked and therefore think. And that is all you can desire from your art. There is nothing else. And for those who want the accolades and for those who want the awards, it is something that is unfortunate, because that's really not part of what art is about. I refuse to judge children's art competitions. I just refuse. I think it's absolutely absurd. My methods of teaching are always alternative. For me, I have to give my complete heart to my student. I would make a I would be very poor if I taught, because all the money that I earn from my teaching goes back to my kids. I don't take any money for my alternative teaching. It's something that I really, really don't agree to, because if I had to get paid as a teacher, then it's a job.
Okay.
But we have the collective studio where we've had many students come, we do it pro bono. We had the privilege of extra space. I started my life with 250 rupees as my savings. I have never taken alimony, and I've never taken money from my parents. And I have never sold my work on my own in terms of going out and trying to sell it. And, you know, everything is possible. You can find your space of dignity in any profession, and you can do it on your own terms if you have the audacity to believe in what you're doing. Then all else will be fine.
Okay.
You know?
So that's what made it a bit organic for you in this art world?
I don't know what I wouldn't know how to interpret organic. I'm very disciplined. I have been instrumental in many kind of sort of systems that are subtly there in the art world, that have come from my insistence right from the age of 26. So I think that that understanding of responsibility of who you are and how you place yourself, and how you recognize that you have to give in order for you to get. So that becomes something that would define professionalism for me. You have to be professional in whatever you do. You have to be held accountable for whatever you do. All else will fall into place.
Right. Rekha, tell us, you mentioned the alternative methods of teaching. So are these art students that you encourage?
I've been teaching from 30 years, and kids who are actually at art college who find systems that are really problematic. You can't apply, there is no application, they sort of come. And I have, I think, I have a space for the underdog in life. I love the underdog, and the underdog that survives and just becomes the icon. That is what life is about. All my students have been success stories because they've made themselves success stories. All you need to do with somebody is you need to have compassion, belief, and a whole load of discipline. That's all. I don't believe that, and somebody has to come to you with desire.
True.
Somebody has to come to you with desire. You can't sell desire to somebody. So I don't think when people say I don't have talent, I can make anybody learn what they need to learn if they know that they have desire.
Okay.
That's.
And this is an ongoing process. Your teaching is continues with your work.
Yes, every year I said this is my last year. So yeah, last year was to be my last year. We just got 2 more people that have come. So my partner Surendran always says, please don't hear a story. Please don't, because if you do, yeah, then there's a problem. So yeah.
So Rekha, apart from painting, you also have explored photography and video and filmmaking as maybe not as part of your parallel work, but as interests that you have explored.
No, I think you're giving me a grander space of existence than I have. I did photography professionally. I studied under Jyoti Bhatt, and that was what I did to earn my that was my space of economy. So I did photography professionally since the age of 18 till I was 24. Then got my scholarship, never touched the camera again, till I started playing with my smartphone. and then got gifted a very beautiful camera to take photographs of my cat from my partner Surendran, and that took me back into photography, and I use it now as a very strong element in my work, as one of the language choices which you would see, or which is in fact behind us on this. And then I use personal autobiographical images
okay.
that are not photoshopped or altered, but used, and so therefore you still see it within the realm of it being a painting. I did do, you're right in saying that I have a great love for documentary filmmaking, so I did do a small space of training in London. Recognized very early on that when I came back, I desired really to pitch my tent completely with painting, but knew that I was tucking my desire away. I have now just in the process of making a small film, but I am not doing the camera work. I'm working on a conceptual idea that has long been gestating, where I want to do myself in conversation with people that are significant in my life. And so I started with Jyoti Bhatt, because I also think that the area of archiving fascinates me, and I'm sorry to say that there's a paucity of good archiving in India, of the number of artists. If I take somebody like Bhupen Khakkar, who has died without, the number of interviews that have been done and that have not been recorded. And so therefore I would really, it would seem an appropriate time to give a lot of credit to the Lalit Kala Akademi and to the leadership of Divanji in particular, who has the vision to understand that no opportunity is to be lost. It can always be trashed later.
True.
But to take it, to believe in it, and to see whether it can therefore then work as a moment in time that serves other needs at a later date. And I'm so extraordinarily excited to see his endeavor in that. And I truly, with great respect, acknowledge it. So that would be what I would want to do, to make these small things. And also, we had another interesting conversation recently, and my generation of people, we often talk about this. I get really irritated with people as they grow older who lament that they can't understand the space of flux with technology, whatever it is that happens to be that space of progress. And I think to myself, what a stupid remark, and it's very Indian. You won't find, Western or people outside of the Indian territories speaking like this. And I think that it's imperative that we use our technology, we understand it and we don't fear it, one in our personal lives, but also in these areas, whether it's archiving, whether it is whatever it is, that we're getting these marvelous, scientific, technological things that allow us to do things better. And yes, I think we need to, if not necessarily within our personal work, everybody doesn't have to be, making art that uses technology, but to use technology and to not be fearful of it. And so you progress in the world unhindered, a time is going to come when you can't do banking except on your, online banking, or, you can't get a ticket. And if you hinder yourself in your 50s by saying, oh, it's not my generational position, I don't know how to use a mobile phone. I mean, how ridiculous is all of this? This is like saying, I don't know how to pick up food and put it in my mouth. This is, you are obliged to survive, as is the dictates of survival. If you're going to be drowning in a flood and you don't know how to swim, you're going to use all your comprehension of what it means to stay afloat, because you don't want to die. And so I think that living in the world and equipping yourself with the best aspects of survival would be the metaphor I would, put out, to stay concurrent with time.
Okay. And that's why you are in constant touch with new media and.
I think so. If I want to be a teacher, if I'm a teacher in a way that where you can speak when I'm traveling and I'm invited to speak with students. I go to the Rijksakademie, I'm teaching in this place or that place. First of all, they see me, little brown lady, or what in a funny little dress. What is she going to come and tell us? And you have to break those myths down And if you're going to be somebody who's illiterate about the real world, I think you might as well stay at home and have your chapati and dal and be happy. You know?
So what's going on now? What are you painting? And if you could talk a little about the last few years of your work in painting, and the new exhibition that you said was coming up soon in Delhi.
You know, I will be very boring in that it's very difficult for me to to see the chronology of time in such ways.
That's right.
The chronology of time for me comes through the space of how India presents itself to me. So I think that if I look at, you know, the space of the Babri Masjid, if I look at the shift in the Indian political scenario, if I see the BJP in power now, that's what actually acts as my benchmarks of dates and how things are to be viewed, and what is it that impacts or disturbs me. And through those areas of life, do I get my time sequences.
Right.
And so I apologize that I can't sort of do it in any other way. And so my recent exhibition has works that I've started off that, let me rephrase that. I had done, after the horrible genocide in Gujarat, I'd done a show called Bye Bye Baby, which apparently was just about Mithun leaving home, but it wasn't about that. It was actually about the loss of innocence. I wrote a text, and there was an American writer that also was invited to write the text by my gallery, and it made the bookends for an ability for audience to enter into the readability of the work. And I talk about that because we've just had the birth of our grandson, and I must say at this point that we have an adopted granddaughter who's not Mithun's child but our friend's child, and so I have to say this is my second, because we acknowledge Aditi as our first grandchild. She's 16 years old, and we were too old to be auntie and uncle, so we are legally her grandparents. So our single child, Mithun, has had a baby, and so Mehran was born. And so the advent of Mehran coming into our lives, you know, you get lots of photographs and you enjoy that. And there was one particular photograph that caught my attention, because I tend to look at photographs, as I was saying to Divanji yesterday, from more formalistic premises. There was this photograph of this little cutie pie being held by these dark hands of the lady who was with them very briefly. And it fascinated me because it was sort of this thing of the external. And that provoked and prompted a set of 4 paintings that I've done, which is not about Mehran, but has Mehran in them as the takeoff point. And which is again talking about spaces of the loss of innocence.
Okay.
I can't say that I ever imagined I would be in a country that is so firmly conservative as it is today, so firmly rooted in a politics that makes my heart break. But I have also another way of addressing such issues. I think that I do not want to see my country in a state of economic disrepair. And so I have to respect the mandate, whatever it is. And for as long as that mandate is, I would want hopefully for my country to be successful. But I would hold my space of resistance with responsibility, not with destructiveness. And therefore, as an artist, it is one of the spaces that I have as an ability to be able to mediate or to examine. And it has been a conflict for me. I'm also dealing with work that is looking at the space of histories,
Okay.
Which you will see as perhaps one of my last slides, and which was recently just shown at the Indian Art Fair. I have finally brought my face. Or let me rephrase that again. My work has many times, on many occasions, I've been asked whether my work is autobiographical, and I've always responded and said that my work is autobiographical insofar as it deals with the female ancestry. And then since I am a female, therefore it is my ancestry, therefore it is autobiographical insofar as that. Which was not really to play a semantic game, but to actually to acknowledge that it is not personalized stories, but things that deal with the world of female existence, and therefore I am connected to it. But in the last set of works that I've just done, and there will be 5 more added to it, it's called a modern day oleograph, and it has ghost images of my face that are the face, and then the bodies that and the spaces around are of images that I have taken from my travels that are hugely significant to me. And it's really talking about this world of existence, taken, stolen, borrowed, plundered, that frame you, almost like you pin the butterfly as a specimen. And so there is a loss always to all of these things. I've lost something of my India for what I have worked and believed in for so long. But I have never been able to ever play the victim. I can't, it's not part of my space of existence. And so what do I do? It's not an India that upholds the deciphering of my constitution as I believe it. I am seeing, farmers kill themselves. I'm seeing women humiliated, stripped naked. This is the 21st century. I'm 56. I don't know how many more years I'm going to wait to see the space of dignity accorded to others as I would want my own dignity pronounced. So yes, and I see female fetuses aborted. I see the preference to male children, preference to their education. I see young female children, and male as well in this instance, I'm sure too, raped and molested, and so this is the reality of my India. I have governmental policies that don't hold spaces of liberty as I desire them. All of this is my India, and I still want to be in this India. I still want to hold belief for change, and yet I can't live in denial of what is conflicting with my spaces of either idealism or reality. And so this exhibition perhaps is somewhere about that.
Wow. So no disappointments, tiredness when you talk of, when there's so much happening, but you continue to paint and you continue to say your motive is also hope, and you... I
can never call defeat on life. I can never call defeat on life. I find it, maybe that's where I'm arrogant. Maybe that's where the cap fits about my arrogance. I think to call defeat on something is to believe that you have no ability to create change. I think that I do believe there is an ability to create change. Maybe it will take a lot of time, but it's through the individual relationship that is where I hold great hope. It's through the individual relationship with an outer world.
But not all of the art world with its commerce and with its great show value, things like that. Does it ever bother you? The commerce
of
it?
No, I'm not. I'm somebody. Money buys me liberty.
I agree. As a woman, even more.
as an individual. I would say that, and I think it's how you use your money.
Okay.
How you, for example, I really don't by choice know who my collectors are, so my gallery very sweetly will prompt me. It's in no way to be disrespectful, but one is I have a bad memory, and two is it's really not my scope. I have a 25-year relationship with my gallery. I tease her that it's more a marriage than my marriage with my partner. I think that when you can be honored within a system and a system honors you, I think that's sufficient.
Right.
The art world, is often targeted for these issues about commerce. And I have a slightly different take on it. I was very proud that my country and its artists command its attention on a world stage. We are of international value. We are seen as on par, and that is something that as an individual artist I have worked for. I have been in international contexts from the age of 26. And so when you say, hi, I'm Rekha Rodwittiya and I'm from India, nobody knows you. If you had to say that, hi, I'm Rekha Rodwittiya and I'm from America, everybody knows the context. And so individually and collectively, I think many of us have worked to be ambassadors of information that has contextualized larger areas of contemporary history in order for, because of our belief in the value of where we come from. And I'm somebody who's very proud that we have art that holds value in India. So I won't play the coy bride on that ever.
Great. And how do you see, as a teacher, as a person who's so well traveled, how do you see the young artists of today and their work?
Very savvy, very smart, sometimes lazy.
Lazy.
But no, I wouldn't paint everybody with the same brush. I think that they're less political.
Okay.
I think that the space of political awareness has been diluted. And I would certainly say that if I'm critical, my critique is that the individual overrides the collective.
Okay.
And I think that we are no space ever in the world should ever believe that the collective is to be ignored.
Right.
However economically progressive or well established your economy may be, it is imperative, absolutely imperative, that societies understand and individuals understand that there is a space where consideration about the collective must be everybody's concern, every individual's concern. And that's, I think, what really would hold those utopias of idealism, where we would create a consciousness that is about believing you belong somewhere.
And then, of course, you create according to.
And therefore your responsibility of it being yours.
That's right.
You know.
Which you do.
Which I hope we all do.
Thank you, Rekha. Thank you so much. Wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.